When did you stop trusting people? The chances are, if you're watching this video, you and like many other people in the world right now have a very difficult time trusting others because of the hurt that you have experienced by trusting other people. And so in this video, I want to explore the real reason why you find it so difficult to trust other people. And by the time you're done watching this video, you will understand how you can actually healthily trust others without running the risk of being completely taken advantage of. In order to do that, we have to understand the 3 stages of trust. So the first stage is immature naivete. In this stage, people are overly trusting of others. They dish out their trust left and right because at the core of this stage, if you are here, you believe that everyone is fundamentally good. And so this is the stage that children are at. This is the stage that infants are at. This is the stage that, young adults, teenagers are at. And it's also the stage where people who just don't have a lot of life experience are at. So theoretically, you could be in your 60s and still at this stage. And so this stage is helpful as a child because you need to be able to blindly trust in your authority figures because that gives you the sense of safety and security necessary in order to healthily grow and develop into a person. And so the only reason that this becomes a problem and that this stage reaches a limitation is because eventually you start running into people who are not necessarily your caregivers or your parents. You might have even experienced abuse at the hands of your parents or caregivers. But you start to experience people who aren't actually trustworthy. And so you can either continue to stay in this stage and be shocked and just absolutely flabbergasted that people could possibly do evil or hurtful things, and just continue to stay in that loop where you keep causing yourself pain because you don't understand how people can not be trustworthy, and then you keep trusting. And so what ends up happening is if you graduate from this stage, or when you graduate from this stage, which obviously if you're watching this video, you definitely have, you move on to the second stage, which I call immature cynicism. And so in this stage, this is the next development beyond the immature naivete. And this is a natural stage that is not necessarily a pathology either. It serves its purpose to help your psyche reconcile the pain and the betrayal that you experienced when you were moving out of the immature naivete stage. It's able to help you come to terms with the fact that people are not trustworthy. And so the depth of this stage, you eventually get to a point where nobody is trustworthy. And that's probably where you are right now if you're watching this video. You think that, everyone is just fundamentally selfish and, bad-natured, evil, if you will, and that they're just not worth trusting, and it's just better to withhold that so that you don't get hurt. And so that, of course, is a very valid and reasonable coping mechanism from a psychological standpoint. The problem with that is that it's going to really make it difficult for you to develop relationships. It's going to make it difficult for you to even, advance in your career and in your life. And so ultimately, despite the sense of sophistication or wisdom that you may feel in this stage, it's really not that wise to be here because ultimately it's self-destructive towards yourself, and it's also going to alienate you from everyone around you. And there was a quote that I heard from a friend of mine who was a Eastern Orthodox Christian, and he was saying that good and evil are not a war happening out in the world. It's not a divide out there that you can measure. It is a divide that crosses down the middle of every heart of every man and woman on the planet. And so that means is that we have a little bit of good and we have a little bit of evil in all of us. And so once you come to that realization, you move on to the third stage, which I call mature trust. And so this is where you move on from entirely giving up on the idea that people can be good. And you accept the fact that yes, they can be good, they can also be evil, and that I can be that way too. And so in this stage, you start to become more self-aware. You recognize, you look back at the previous stages and you see how you were naive, you see how you were cynical. And you recognize the validity and the purpose that both of those stages had for you. And so you draw and extract the lessons learned from those stages and you integrate it into your current way of being. And so what that would look like is, yes, on one hand, people can betray you. On the other hand, people can also be very trustworthy and do amazing things. And so with that in mind, you start to take the risk. You recognize that it is ultimately a net positive if you take that risk of trusting other people, extending your hand and seeing what can happen. Because more often than not, people also are looking for someone to trust. And so by doing that, you're able to start building connections again. You're able to start building relationships again. And it is very vital that you eventually reach this stage because, like I said, if you are currently completely given up on the idea that anyone can actually be good, chances are you're probably really miserable. And so that's why I encourage you to become aware of these stages and reflect on your life and see how you had been going through these stages and try to start emulating the third stage of mature trust until it's just ingrained in your being. And so a couple things that you can do to start working on moving out of the immature cynicism and into the mature trust. First of all, you can look at places in your life where you are afraid of rejection or you are afraid of judgment. And you can look at how that is limiting your life. Say there is a job opportunity that you're looking for, or maybe even just a romantic partner. You can actually start to take that risk of putting yourself out there and recognizing that yes, rejection is very much a possibility. But without taking on that risk, there's no growth that can possibly happen. So that's just one example. And then the other thing that you can do to help getting to this mature trust is to reflect on your life and just do some introspection and see the specific ways in which your trust was betrayed as you were growing up and start to recognize how those fears that developed might still be running your life. So with that being said, those are the 3 stages of trust as I understand them in my own psychological model. And hopefully you are now able to navigate trust in a more mature and understanding way. So with that being said, like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Drop a comment down below to share your own thoughts on trust. Maybe I'm totally full of shit and you completely disagree with me. I would love to hear about it. So I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.